identity and access management. So, how many times a day do you authenticate to different systems? So, you're going between vCenter, NSX, you've got VCF automation, VCF operations. Well, VCF single sign-on gives your team a unified authentication experience across all of the VCF components. So this way you can log in once and you're good to go. It's not just convenient, it's also a security improvement too, because SSO also reduces password fatigue and it also strengthens protection against unauthorized access. The system works with your existing identity infrastructure as well as traditional directory services, and you get centralized identity management across your fleet, and your users get a much better experience. So that's a win-win. So single sign-on and identity access in VCF are configured at a VCF fleet level. So its purpose is to provide secure access and authentication services across your VCF components. Identity and access management in VCF follows this design. So firstly, we have integration with a variety of externally managed identity providers and directory services. So this provides the authentication and the identity assertion for users and groups. And then the identity provider is customer managed. All right. So this identity provider connects to your SDDC components via the VCF identity broker. All right. So this is a VCF component, the VCF identity broker. And this is provisioned into Cloud Foundation. The VCF identity broker enables single sign-on and it streamlines the authentication across different SDDC components. The third component of this design uses VCF single sign-on, so SSO, to provide centralized authentication, identity federation, and user management across your VCF instances. So how does it all work? Well, we'll first start with the configuration of VCF single sign-on. So as part of a VCF 9 deployment, each VCF component is initially deployed to use its own authentication source for management. So to be clear, single sign-on across VCF components is not configured as part of the initial deployment process. This is something you do after deployment. To strengthen security and streamline user access, VCF SSO can be configured as a post-deployment operation. So VCF SSO provides an improved experience for users who can log in once and then gain that seamless level of access to manage VCF components based upon what they've been granted access to. And we'll go into that a little bit deeper in the demo. VCF Operations also provides an inbuilt workflow to enable VCF single sign-on, which simplifies and speeds up setup and integration. The VCF components can use different sets of authentication protocols, such as SAML 2.0 and OIDC. So how does SSO work in VCF? Well, as part of the workflow to set up SSO, we also set up a second component, and that's what I alluded to before, the VMware Identity Broker, otherwise known as VIDB. Now, VIDB brokers the connection between VCF components and an externally managed identity provider or directory service. And VCF supports several different identity providers, which use either modern or directory-based authentication mechanisms. So modern identity providers, these include Okta, Microsoft ADFS, Microsoft Entra ID, Ping, and any other generic SAML 2.0 provider. The directory-based services can be configured either using Active Directory LDAP or Open LDAP. So once VCF SSO is enabled, VCF components are configured as OIDC clients, which connect to VIDB. Now, to complete the configuration of SSO, an admin then assigns access to SSO users or groups for each VCF management component. So this process is performed as a secondary step from the management console of each VCF component. Once again, this will be clearer in the demo. And then from here, users can then be assigned specific roles and granted management access. So by assigning users and group access, admins can ensure VCF components are secure and compliant. So let's just take a look at the workflow. And in this example, we're going to set up VCF for use with Active Directory, all right, which is what many of our customers are using. All right, so here's just a quick demo that I've created. This is the VCF operations console. So this is where everything is now done in VCF 9. We're just going to log in. We're just going to log in locally as an admin here initially. This is the console. So this is our home screen or one of our home screens. Fleet management, you can see here is on the left. We're going to configure identity and access management. So these are all the different components here for configuring single sign-on, and there are a number of different prerequisites that we need to put in place as well to ensure that everything is smooth. All right, so you take a read of that. Here we're looking at the different tiers within a fleet. So we have our VCF instances. This particular VCF instance is called VCF instance 1, all right, which is pretty self-explanatory. All right, and this is the workflow. So we start with choosing the identity broker, so the VIDB that we deploy. All right, and there are two different ways of doing this. We can deploy it as an embedded identity broker as part of the management domain vCenter server, or for larger environments, we recommend actually using the identity broker appliance. But because this is a lab, we're just going to go with the embedded model. We'll hit next. We can see here that our second step is to configure the identity provider. All right, so as I mentioned, we have uh, a selection of different modern identity providers. All right, once again, these are all externally managed or directory-based identity providers, also externally managed. And in this case, because Active Directory is so popular, we're just going to showcase that one. So I'll click on Active Directory here. We'll hit next. We'll hit to go and configure this. We configure it with a directory name, and we configure all of our environmentals for Active Directory. So the primary domain controller, the base DN, the bind username, and the bind user password. So all in Active Directory. Uh, all right, so we hit next. This is just a quick summary of what we're doing. We then hit finish. All right. And then our third step is then to configure our users and group provisioning. All right. So we're configuring this to connect to all of our Active Directory accounts. But then what we need to do is then align all this to our VCF components. All right. So we do that. And then the third step after this is then assign roles to those particular accounts. All right. So baby steps. Let's just hit the next button. This is what we're doing. So here we're going to assign the Active Directory attributes that are relevant to our particular deployment. All right, so we're going to hit employee ID there. We hit next. Here we're selecting our existing Active Directory groups that we have configured in our environment. So once again, using the base group DN name, we go through, we can search using a particular name. So in this pre-canned example here, we can see we've got a number of groups. Okay, so we've got group 0 and we also have a nested group. So we're going to select both of those. Now, in addition to configuring groups for access, we can also go in and configure individual users as well. Or in this case, we're going to do both. All right, so once again, we're putting in our base user DN. We have a search option, and we're going to select users 4 and 5 here in this example. All right, we hit next on that. Here's just a summary. So we're configuring two different Active Directory groups, two different users, and we hit finish. Then we're done, and we're finished with the setup. But as I mentioned, there are a couple of little things that we need to do after this. Obviously, you go in and adjust all of your backups, but what we now need to do is assign particular roles to these accounts. So for example, one of those users, we may assign a role as being an admin. So when they log into any of these consoles, they may have admin level access. Once again, you can choose the level of access depending on the console. All right, so what we'll do here very quickly is we'll go into VCF operations, which is what we're in here now, and we're going to um, configure VCF operations for single sign-on. So when we log in, instead of just having that local admin that we logged in to before, we'll have an SSO option for a user to come in and sign in with their own user credentials. All right, so we'll configure that. It's just prompting us here that we need to assign a role to that user. All right, so to do that, we're going into the control panel. Just very quickly, I'll show you that you can see here that we have now successfully set up VCF SSO, which is good. But yeah, we'll go into the control panel. We'll go into access control here. We'll go and select our particular groups. And what we're going to do now is import this group, all right, into this particular environment. So once again, we can do a search. We'll select the groups that we want. All right. Then we'll go in and assign the particular role. So we've imported the group. Now we're assigning the roles. We're just going to give this particular these groups and this user admin level permissions. We assign that, we hit save, and we're done. All right, so just remember, we're logged in as the administrator right now. Okay, we're going to log out and we're going to test it, see if it works. All right, so now we have this new option, login method, VCF SSO. So we didn't have that before. It was local, it was a local account. So we're going to select that. It then prompts us for our SSO user account. So we'll log in with that. And here we go. We've got access into VCF operations and we're an admin. Okay. So yeah, all done. So that's how you configure that. Just to be sure, we can see here that we're logged in as the user. All right. So now we're not quite finished yet. What we're going to do now is configure the vSphere client as well. Um, so we're logging here with SSO. Go into admin, look at our global permissions. I'm going to do the same thing here. Okay, so going to select our particular domain and our group. So we'll do a quick search. I'm going to give it the admin role. This is for vCenter. We'll hit OK. Noting we're still logged in as the administrator. We're going to log out now. And we can now see that we have the option to log in using our own account, okay, which is a lot more secure, a lot more compliant, it's auditable, etc. Okay, so we can see here that we are logged in with that user.